let's switch gears a little bit and go from the larger scale to some of the smaller, more technical. There's two technical things that I definitely want to talk about today. One is, the production of the content and what is changing, and AI and how that's going to, because that's the buzzword on everyone's lips. But I also want to talk about genres. Okay, and I want to dig into a little bit about where the profit is in genres and why, and get your opinion on this because I know you've got strong opinions on this.
Obviously, there are certain genres that have always traveled better than others. I've always been a big fan of horror because, in addition of having a personal passion for it, I saw that even when I was a kid, it was pretty normal watch horrors coming from other countries, or even to see our own horrors, Italian horrors that at the time in the 70s obviously was very prolific and prominent, like Dario Argento, but also Lucio Fulci, and before that, Mario Bava and Riccardo Freda. It was a highly exportable genre at the time, and it continues to remain one of the easiest in localizing and in globalizing. So I think that horror as a genre adapts very nicely and very smoothly to this new environment where content is produced for a very, very global audience. If you look at horror has always had a very important share of the box office. Even today in 2025, if we look at the box office figures of these years, it accounts for roughly 17% of the global US box office. That's the horror share, up from 11% last year. And most horrors, with just a few notable exceptions, continue to overperform both theatrically and on television. Everywhere you place horror, it seems to work, to the point that many studios have emerged that are focused almost entirely on the production of horror content. Blumhouse, for example, of Cineverse, that has recently even launched after the success of Terrifier 3, a motion picture group that will focus largely also on the production of horror. So I think that horror is a genre that lends itself well to the generational change, the requirements of the generational change. It can be offered both in long form, in short form, in installments. It's a dramatic structures. It's inherently built on cliffhangers. So it adapts very well to any format, whether vertical or horizontal or any length. People are used to watching horrors in segments because it's made of installments. It's very easily localizable. Even a badly dubbed horror has always performed well on a global scale. There are channels on YouTube that are resurrecting horrors that have been forgotten by even the most passionate horror buff, and that are being brought back into the industry with the dubbing that obviously is improving now with AI, but in the beginning was out of sync. And yet people continue to enjoy foreign horror, the new technologies enabling horror creators to finally generate special effects and visually very appealing content without the need of spending significant amounts of money makes also a huge difference, because obviously horror requires a certain degree of special effects,
Yes.
To be effective. So in my opinion, horror, if one wanted to enter the production arena today, is one of the safest and probably most new market ready kind of genres that there are out there.
I think I'm going to add a little piece to it of just my personal thoughts as well on why horror and AI production, and we'll talk a little bit about hybrid production in a minute. One of the things that I've always noted about horror is you're not reliant upon big actor names. In fact, it works better when there's unknowns, because it feels like that could be my friend next door, or it could be me. If it's a big Hollywood star in a horror, my feeling is that you separate the reality of that could really happen to me, because, well, that's Tom Cruise or whatever. It just, for me, doesn't work personally. And I think is going to be interesting because you're not going to have to use the likeness of big Hollywood stars. And I think horror is one of those genres where you don't need those big stars anyway. So you can either use local actors, and we'll talk about hybrid in a minute, or you can generate your own characters and nobody knows them anyway. But it doesn't matter in horror because it's not built upon that. What do you think? Do you think that there is something about the fact that, you don't need big budget stars, and that's part of the economics of why horror works so well?
No, I think you hit a very good point. Besides the fact that, as you correctly pointed out, we will soon be in a position to generate synthetic actors that will be indistinguishable from the real actors they interact with in a potential horror content. But the idea of having actors that were faces that were a little bit anonymous in the horror genre is not new at all. I mean, even if you think about The Exorcist, for example, when William Friedkin chose Jason Miller in the leading part of Father Karras, and Jason Miller was practically unknown at the time than for small parts, and obviously he was more of a writer. He had won a Pulitzer Prize for an important play, I think, and he chose him for his face and for his relatability. The less recognizable is an actor in a horror, and the more relatable the character is to yourself. And you're absolutely right. And this is another added element that makes horror a particularly suitable genre to interact with the new AI technologies, because even if you had a synthetic actor or part of the story was made utilizing a synthetic version of a real actor, it really wouldn't matter. Actually, it would probably help to strengthen the power of engagement power of the content.
Every week there's a new model coming out. Every week there's a new ability within those models. I mean, I've just literally played with Nano Banana for images this week, where you can insert products. And I think this will be interesting when we talk about advertising and revenue generation. But you can insert products into pictures where the product wasn't before. I had my wife sitting at the table eating a bowl of pasta, and I asked Nano Banana to say, make her drink a can of Coke. And there's a can of Coke in her hand. I mean, this is the power of some of the AI. Tell me your thoughts on where AI touches this industry now today, and where you see the acceleration of AI.
Well, obviously, we read about AI and how the entertainment industry, the motion picture industry, and obviously even the studios are gradually embracing it, inevitably embracing it. If you look at the advancement, progress that generative AI is making at every iteration of each individual model, whether you're using Runway, Kling, or Sora, it's astonishing. And we are clearly in a position where we're going to soon be able to generate an entire motion picture out of a single prompt on the generative video AI platform. But I think what is astonishing is how generative AI is evolving in giving a degree of humanity and of expression to the generation that wasn't there before. And this is what is really striking me the most: possibility to combine the human with the non-human in a seamless and indistinguishable way. Create a content where the interaction between real footage and AI is so intimate and so well blended that it becomes impossible to distinguish one from the other. This is, I think, the direction that the technology is taking us. I don't think that the human factor, the human creativity will ever be eliminated from the equation. It's impossible, I think. Then utilizing generative video AI technologies to augment, enhance that visual capability that you can have by using an
I
iPhone or
think
any other
your
instrument.
your word there, augment, for me resonates. I mean, a lot of people in my industry talk about the fact that AI will replace surgeons. I don't think that's the end game. I think it's a set of tools that augment capabilities so that everyone can get better. And an interesting thing was, I talked with a recent friend of mine who's a filmmaker called James Owen, and James is making, super low budget horror movies. And I talked to him and said, "Well, why don't you just do this all in AI?" And he said, "Because I actually enjoy making the movies as well. I actually enjoy setting up the cameras and shooting it. Very happy to augment with AI and get the production quality and value up." But I do believe that a lot of filmmakers get into filmmaking because they want to make filmmaking. I don't think that a lot of creative filmmakers want to become prompters. What do you think of that?
It would be very sad to think that all movies were realized entirely in the darkness of, of a small room surrounded by screens. And was exactly the point that I was making before. I think that the element of creating real footage, whether it's live footage or photographs, will be indispensable for a proper use of these technologies. That if you notice, when you prompt one of these generative AI, just a prompt, even though it generates very realistic outputs, there is a lack of how can I say, a lack of authenticity in the final content. While if you ask the generative AI to animate a picture that you have already taken, suddenly see the photographs coming to life, and that authenticity, that humanity that was portrayed in the original photo, on the original footage, is then augmented, enhanced, and this is something that I think generative AI is not yet able to do by itself. It was somehow as if generative AI interpreted how the scene that I wasn't able to complete because of lack of resources in terms of special effects. It was as if generative AI looked into the scene and realized the potential that it missed at the time, and it's now possible through its intervention. You use, for example, the extend command on the generative AI. Say that you have used the photo of an original clip, and you're creating an AI augmentation, enhancement of the original content. Well, when you use the extend command, you notice that sometimes, not always, but generative AI brings you in a direction that is exactly the direction that you would have gone had you had the resources to do it, whether, it's an expression that the actor wasn't able to make, or was a special effect that where you weren't able to bring, to the next level. And this is what I find fascinating, because the interaction with generative AI is not only technical, but at some point it becomes really creative. It's your partner that is somehow interpreting to some extent what your desire as a filmmaker was from the very start. But